Bum, 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 bum. Hey guys, it's Asher from Asher Warrior Props, and today we're going to be building the Faraam helmet from Dark Souls, from the Dark Souls series. Specifically, the version from the Dark Souls 2 CGI trailer. That one is my favorite. A couple of housekeeping things about the Faraam helmet. The Faraam helmet has a lot of iterations. There is the Dark Souls 2 game model. There is the Dark Souls trailer model. There's several statues and whatever, and they're all different. So what I did was, the general shape is just about the same across all of it. It's mostly in regards to the placement of the faceplate. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make an accurate representation, accurate to the CGI trailer from Dark Souls 2. For this build, it's going to be almost entirely HD foam. I do use some black foam in the build clips, and that's mostly I just ran out of 2mm HD, so just black EVA is what I had on hand, so that's what I went ahead and did. I also molded and casted my foam build. I have several in the shop right now because it's one of my most requested commissions. So I was like, I'm just gonna make this easier on myself and take a mold of my hand-built one, because my hand-built ones are accurate. I can control them better, and whatever. Yeah, we're going to there. This template is, once again, 100% free if you go over to my website. This template is it's a little different than most of them. You're not going to print this one in poster mode. You are actually, I don't like that either. You're not going to print this one in poster mode. You are actually going to print this one in standard page format. So when you click print, there is, I think, 7 pages. If people like it this way, I will try to continue to put most of my templates in this format. There are 2 versions of this template that are in the template folder. There's one called Fluted Base and one that is what we're doing today. So I have built this several times before I was kind of happy and settled with what I've done here. The fluted base is referring to these ridges up top. In all of the statues, these look like individual stacked ridges. In the Dark Souls 3 game model, they look like fluted pieces akin to alvas. But then on the Dark Souls 2 trailer, they also look like individual ridges like so. And since I was basing my build off of the Dark Souls 2 trailer, I opted to have some steeper ridges like this. But if you want to do a fluted base, you're just simply going to follow my steps like this, but apply similar techniques that you saw in the Alva video, where every other piece is going to be cut at an angle. One final housekeeping thing. I am not a paid sponsor of Starbond Adhesives. I kind of talk a lot about them at one point in this video. And I just wanted to let you know I am not a paid sponsor. This is not a paid sponsorship. This is all my opinions on Starbond are completely my own. They did send me a goodie bag of stuff to test out and requested that I review it and post some stuff about it if I liked it. And I do. I really enjoy some Starbond adhesives, and I will be using a lot of the medium thick CA glue for this build. So I figured I would just let you know so it doesn't come up as a shock, like, oh, did he get sponsored about this? No, I didn't get a paid sponsorship. They sent me some free goodies, and this is kind of my open review of them. So for this build, it's relatively simple. People always ask, what kind of foam do I need? Always HD foam. It is the best on the market. I love it. It's phenomenal. And I'm spinning. If you're just building one, you can probably get away with a roll of 6, 4, and 2. I didn't use any 10 for this. For this build, we're going to start out by cutting out all of our 6mm HD foam pieces. This includes the base shape of the helmet, so that is parts that are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The neck trim. You can also do the fin out of 6. It's kind of up to you. Now, once you've got all of that traced out and potentially cut out, we are going to cut out our base shape pieces. These are pieces 1 through 4. And traditionally, I have a gluing order of 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, something. You can just glue it together. At this point, this helmet is not overly complex, so you don't really have to have a gluing order. You can if you want. What I did for my build was I did pieces 1 to 1 go together, pieces 3 and 4 go together, and then you kind of combine everything at the center. And it should look something like this. This is the base shape, and it's already taking form really quickly. Once you've got all your 6mm pieces cut out, we're then going to go down to the neck flare. The neck flare is the piece that looks like this. There's nothing real special about this. You can make it one uniform piece if you want, or you can cut it in two separate pieces and cut one side at an inward 45-degree angle and stick it like this. One important note about this is the edge that connects to the base of the helmet should be cut at an outward bevel. The exact degree and angle is not overly specific. It just needs to go on there to create the really cool flare effect like so. But again, that's kind of up to you. The piece I'm referring to is this one, right there. So again, should be two separate pieces, one angled piece in the center, and attach like so. With this, you now have your base build. Pretty simple, right? Right, but also wrong. Once you've got that, we're gonna go on over to the faceplate. I know I kind of sped through the base build. The base build is just relatively simple. In the clips, my build quality is a little sloppy, and that's because I have glue stains going on because I was using an older can of glue at the time of recording, but you can clean that up later. I'm not going to shy away from showing you how ugly some of my builds can get, and everything. The professionalism comes down to how you clean it up and refine it. So don't worry about these seams and things. We're going to come back to that in a bit. We're now going to go over to the 4mm sections of this build, and for those, what that entails is the faceplate pieces and the forehead piece, and the top of the fin. You don't have to cut that out at the moment. We can do that later. We're going to start out with the forehead piece. The forehead piece is relatively simple. It does have two darts on the side. So once you cut one out, flip it over, trace it, glue the darts together, and then glue Once the base shape of the forehead piece has been put on, we're now going to get to the part where I get to glaze. Glaze? Is that what the kids say nowadays? I get to hype up Starbond. So for the part of the trim on the forehead piece, I'm using some 2mm, preferably HD foam, and I used the Starbond medium high performance super glue with the precision tip that comes with the kit. And what I did was lightly go around the edge, trim a piece of the 2mm, go around more, trim a piece of the 2. One thing I really appreciate about the Starbond medium is its fast set time. With foam, it sets almost instantaneously. I have had almost no failure with it, where previous brands of super glue that I've used oftentimes don't immediately set. So then you're having to hold it on there and you get super glue all over your hands, and it's never fun because then you have to chew it off and spit it out, and it's all over your couch, and your wife gets mad that you're spitting super glue all over the couch, and it's really frustrating, really, for her anyway. The medium CA glue has not failed me yet. It also has some minor gap filling properties, which we'll touch on in a minute. So once you've got the 2mm trim around the forehead piece, we're then going to add the little arrow piece. I did this out of 4mm HD foam, and all this is just the little detail that it makes the little arrow shape. It looks like this. And that's pretty much that. Now, I did go back later in the build and I tapered it off to make this kind of sharp peak. That's optional. Again, depending on what reference you're using, that should dictate how you do your minor detailing. Have a reference of which version of this helmet you want to put together. Because all the shapes are the same, it's just placement of certain things and details that are different. Once you have that little arrow piece on the forehead, now's the time where I like to go ahead and do some seam and gap filling. So for this, what I normally do is quick seal. Do I have some? I do. This quick seal adhesive caulk. I apply it wet with my finger, and then you can wet sand it later once it's fully dried. But I saw that this is also the Starbond adhesive, medium thick, super, has some gap filling properties to it. So does the thick version of the CA glue. And I was curious to see if it would sand. So what I did was I put a kind of a thick glob on my seam lines, smooth them out with a piece of HD foam, let it dry all the way, because if you're not putting two pieces together, it may take some time to dry. They do have super glue accelerator. And once it was dry, I took some 220 and some 320 grit sandpaper and just lightly went over it to make it smooth. Now in the clips, you will see it still looks like there's a seam. There's actually not, and that's evident by the build here. That is because I used a different pencil and pen than I normally use, and it left stains on the foam. Again, the build quality in this one, the raw build, is not the cleanest I've ever done, but again, I touched it up and you can see you've got a perfect helmet here. After you've got the details, the brim details on the forehead piece, we can then go ahead and add the head sculpt. Now, I'm not going to go over how exactly I sculpted this because when I originally put this together, I had to build several. So I didn't want to have to hand sculpt this each time because it was just going to take up more time than I was allotted for the job that I was doing. So I did end up making what I did was I laid it on the template and I sculpted with monster clay the head sculpt accurate to the trailer. So as you can see, it is exactly one-to-one to how it is in the trailer with the goofy looking dragon on it. Which makes sense. If you ever question the style of this, you got to think that these were generic soldiers. So if they were hammering out this engraving, they would turn that piece upside down and hammer it out from the backside. So they would probably opt for a simpler design like this one instead of compare it to something like Lord of the Rings, where it's got this really pretty filigree, or any named character that has really high-end details. This does not need to be high-end detail because this would be a group of soldiers. So it would be done more quickly and less, intricately, if that makes any sense. If you want to use foam clay, that's how I used to do it. And again, there's really no right or wrong way. I can go into sculpting in another video, but for the purposes of this, I feel like it's just easier for me to tell you. What I did was I made a clay sculpt, I took a silicone mold of it, casted it, and put it on the helmet. Totally doable to do foam clay just directly onto the forehead. I have done that before. It works. Once the forehead sculpt is on there, there's only these last two remaining 2mm foam details. It's these little swivels that go above the knight and above the dragon right here. Once that's done, you are done with the base build and details, and now we only have rivets left. Now, the rivets that I did for this, if you look in the trailer, they look like traditional rivets, but they look like the middle has been hammered in. And that's exactly what I did. I ended up taking some leather rivet caps, not the male part, but the female part, stuck them in the jig that I have for it, and then just hammered the middle with some leather tools, like so, to create this kind of donut-looking rivet thing. You can do that. You can do regular rivets. Sky's the limit. Again, it changes in every variation of this helmet. Like the statues are different. Again, I cannot harp enough that this thing changes a lot, depending on what reference you're using. So once I hammered out enough of those rivets, I simply used my Starbond medium and attached the rivets to the forehead piece, and they just kind of go on the edges like so. And that should be the forehead piece. Once the forehead's done, we're down to the base of the base faceplate. Yeah, I guess it's the parts that go, it's this part right here. There's really nothing special about these other than when you're cutting this out, they do have these detail score lines right here, and all you need to do for that is lightly score this with your knife. So that means not like cutting all the way through the foam, just cutting like a quarter of the way through or halfway through even, scoring those lines and heating them up with a heat gun to get these nice separated detail lines, like so. As with the forehead, for the trim on the Faraam helmet, what I opted to do was use this 2mm, preferably HD foam, and my Starbond medium high performance super glue, multi-purpose. I went around the edge and then applied the 2mm brim detail. When it's done, it should look something like this. And then finally, for this part, all we have left are the rivets. And yeah, that's it. For these rivets, I ended up finding some miniature furniture tack grommets, and I added those, but they look similar to the ones on the forehead, so use whatever you feel like using. Again, there is no right or wrong way to do that. Actually, recording this helmet build was different than most of my other ones, because most of them I can do start to finish just with sheets of foam, but I was like, I want to use rivets, so I want to use real hardware for this, so I did. And with that, you now have your faceplate and forehead piece. Now, moving on to detailing the base of the helmet. The base of the helmet has these nice engraved, or is it engraved or embossed, raised details. For this, I used some more of that black 2mm foam. I cut out those details. You can do it by hand, you can use a laser, you can use a Cricut, you can use whatever you see fit. So I cut out these details, and once again, using my Starbond medium super glue, I attached these by laying out the pieces on a piece of tape, putting the glue on, and then laying the tape over like so. Make sure you get the brim details around the neck flare. And yeah, it's relatively simple. These are really straightforward details here. Once you have those details on, the last remaining main structure is the fin. Now, the fin can be done several different ways. I've done versions where the base of the fin is 10mm HD foam. I've done it where it's 6, I've done it where it's 4, I've done it where it's plastic. So really just pick what you want your base fin to be. Hindsight 2020, if I did this again, because I opted to use 6mm foam, I may have used plastic just to make sure it stays in form. The best way to do that out of foam is when you get your roll of foam out, lay it out flat and make sure it stays flat before you cut your piece out. There are these attached details right here, and all I did was skive or bevel the back ends of it and glued it to the fin like so. Once that's on, the last piece is this brim that goes along the top of the fin, and I did this out of 4mm HD foam, and you can cut a strip that's about the width of a standard ruler or yardstick, whatever. Again, it depends on what you're doing, which version of this you're doing. There's a lot of that in this video. So once you've got your 4mm strip cut out, just go ahead and attach that to the top of the fin, and then your fin can go on the helmet. Once again, depending on what reference you're using, the fin may sit lower or sit more forward. Again, I'm using the trailer as my reference. So I made it meet almost to the peak of the forehead, or the middle detail on the raised pieces in the back. Once your fin is attached, we can now start attaching the faceplate. So the faceplate is a little bit tricky, and this is really where your reference is going to come in handy, because in the Dark Souls 3 version, the eye slit is wider and angled down. In the CG trailer, in certain angles, it looks like more like this, but he normally keeps his head down, so it kind of gives the illusion of an angle, but there is a wider space. Pick your reference, pick what one you're going to use, and what I like to do is use some sewing or straight pins, and I like to pin it on the base of the build, draw it out where I think it goes with pencil, and then attack it. So yeah, once you've sketched out where you believe the faceplate goes for your reference, go ahead and attach it with regular contact cement. The last remaining thing, if you did not opt to do the fluted base of this build, we now need to cut out some triangle dowels. And what I did for the triangle dowels was I used 6mm HD foam and cut them out by simply making one undercut down my length sheet of foam, turned it over, and then made another undercut at the peak of the ridge, like so. Once you cut your ridges out, you can simply apply them using your glue of choice. Contact cement works, the super glue works as well. At this point, I have not filled the seams on the helmet because actually the seams are where these ridges go, so you can actually use those as your guidelines for this part. Once you've got your ridges cut out, you can go ahead and apply them with whatever glue you see fit. And once you've done that, the last remaining thing to do is gap filling and seam filling. Now, for most seams on the... I'm gonna have to rest at the bonfire after that one. Phew, that hurt. That was a violent sneeze. I was attacked by that. Anyway, gap filling. So on the back of the helmet, right after you've applied your ridges, I like to stop my ridges, again, based on my reference. You should have a couple of seams just following them. Now, the easiest way to deal with that is, once again, if they're really thick ridges or gaps, use your quick seal wetted down with your finger. If they're smaller seams, you can use the super glue and then sand it down. Once you have done all of that, you are good to go, and that is the build. Use your quick seal to smooth out the base of the ridges along the helmet, and this is to make it have more of that fluted look. As you see here, those ridges look like they are molded as one piece of metal. I like to, every time I build, think of it how the blacksmith in the game would have made it. It would potentially be one piece where you would turn the helmet inside out and taken a hammer piece and hammered it through. Once you've got all that done, you can go ahead and add your damage. Now, I would plan on doing a battle damage in-depth video at some point in the future. For this, I used my Dremel tool to add some pitting and whatever. But make sure you tell a story with your damage. Make your damage make sense. Unless you were cosplaying as the guy from the trailer, make it your own story. Make this your soldier with his own story and his own whatever. So really play into that and make your damage make sense. All that's left for you at home is refined sanding, and I think that's it. This is simultaneously a complex and super simple build to do. This has the complex shaping and some intricate skills that you need to maintain while building it, but it also has just enough level of detail where it's like, all right, you can pass it off as something pretty advanced, but also not struggle a massive amount to build. Again, there is a lot of speculation when you build this kind of helmet because there are so many references across the franchise. Once again, this is simply a guide on, hey, if you're wanting to build this, here's the shapes of the build, and here's how I put them together. But once again, have your reference pulled up throughout the build so you can make those proper adjustments. And with all that said and done, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. This is one of my all-time favorite video game helmets, and I really wanted to do it justice. That's why it took me several builds and several iterations of this to kind of figure out what shaping and the methods I wanted to go about teaching this and communicating it to. I'm very happy with this one. If you're interested in seeing a full cosplay template and tutorial of this, let me know down in the comments below, and I'm happy to take a look at it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That's one that content creators say, is my hair funny? Instagram and Facebook is the place where you can find me the easiest and connect with me if you build this for yourself or anything of mine that you want to share, get advice, or help on. Message me over on Instagram or Facebook. I'm happy to take a look at it. Oh, and if you want a cool shirt, go check out the link down below for the bonfire link that has some of the Action Warrior props, t-shirts, and some cool travel poster design shirts that my wife has designed, which are really, really cool. And yeah, that should be about it. This sexy is for the glory of Farosa. Have fun with this one, Ryan.